Reddit asks, men, would you date a single mother? I wouldn't date a single mother because I don't want children. It's not that the woman is undesirable for having given birth or being a mother, it's that I don't want to be expected to be a father. As a child, I got attached to some men my mother dated, believing they would be my new dad. Then they disappeared. I don't want to do that to anyone. They can break up with you at any moment, no matter how much you care about their kids, and you'll never see them again. It's a huge risk. I never thought it would happen, but I'm about to marry one. I didn't meet her son until almost a year after we started our relationship. Her passion for motherhood, demonstrated by the time she dedicated to her son, the effort she put into his upbringing, and our shared decision not to introduce me to him, confirmed that being with her was the right choice. I met him a few months ago, and he is still unaware of the nature of our relationship. He'll know soon. He's 7 years old, but we definitely have a well-thought-out plan to avoid any problems that might arise in a situation like this. Too many single mothers, my sister included, rush way too fast to introduce men to their children, and I personally find it abominable for all the reasons, many of which will be written in this thread. I dated a single mother once and made it clear from the start that I had no problem with it, but that I didn't want to meet the child until we were both sure we were going to have a serious relationship to avoid precisely this situation. I know a girl who let her boyfriend, whom she had only been dating for 2 months, move in with her and her 3 children under 10. She was trying to end the relationship because he is unbearably controlling, but she changed her mind and now stops you cold if you mention him. Because you don't just date her, you date the whole team. When I was in my 20s, I dated a girl who had a son. She introduced me to him immediately and encouraged me to bond with him. He was a great kid, and for about 8 or 9 months, I got to play dad. She dumped me. Losing her didn't matter to me. Losing the bond with her son was harder for some reason, so I vowed never to do it again. I felt really bad for the boy because she kept doing it. He must have been very confused. In the end, I blocked her on social media, and I truly hope everything worked out well. A friend of mine was engaged to a woman who had a young son with whom he had built a very close relationship. The biological father was a jerk who wasn't involved at all, and the boy saw my friend as a father. Then tragedy struck. His fiancée died in a car accident. My friend did everything possible to get custody of his almost stepson, but he had no legal recourse. The boy was left with his terrible biological father, who cut off all communication between my friend and the child. This affected my friend deeply for a few years. I just broke up with a girl who has sole custody of 2 young children. It was okay, but I don't know if I would do it again. The problem with her was that she moved to my area without having a solid support network, so from the beginning, I was forced to assume the father role, which didn't seem entirely fair to me. The main reason I left her was how much the children imitated her. She was selfish and often rude. She didn't say please or thank you, and the kids were the same. It's very hard to be in a place where you try to give your best for everyone and no one thanks you. I often felt undervalued, and my needs were always the last to be met. It was horrible. I dated a woman who had like 7 kids and was 10 years older than me. We could only see each other at night because the kids were asleep. She always had to leave to pick them up or because the little ones missed her. The older ones would ask me if I was their new dad. The younger ones were mischievous, and she let them make a racket until late at night. If they stayed over, I had to work early the next day. I always had to pay for everyone's food. I couldn't discipline them without starting a fight. It's simply not the same when they aren't yours. A girl I know moved in with her kids to her boyfriend's house after dating for only a month or 2. They broke up right before the holidays, and she was lamenting not being able to give her kids a good Christmas that year because she had to spend a fortune on the first month's rent, last month's rent, and the security deposit for an apartment. And call me crazy, but maybe if she had stayed in her original home, she wouldn't have had to spend so much money on a new place after the breakup. That relationship also lasted less than a year, so I'm sure that whole situation wasn't at all confusing or inconvenient for her children. A friend told me this: when she was little, her mom had a boyfriend named Steve. He seemed great. He took her and her mom for ice cream and to the fair. He moved in with her, and suddenly they had everything. Blenders, toasters, kitchen utensils, and computers. He bought toys and put up a Christmas tree. He could sing. One day she heard them shouting, and the next day, when she came back from school, everything was gone. There was no TV, everything was empty. Her mom had that same don't talk to me face while she resolved this latest problem. She just wanted to watch TV, do her homework, have dinner, and relax. Her mom was asleep in her bed, the only bed they had left. I have never forgotten that story. She told it with so much pain that you can't imagine. For you, 6 months is a short relationship. For a child, it's a long time, and they have the hope that their mom will be happy, safe, and everything will go back to normal. They imagine being happy forever, as they believe everyone else is, and suddenly all of that disappears. If you are going to date a single mother, you have to keep the children in mind. I dated a few single mothers in the past. I'm not perfect, but I treated all of them, both the women and their children, with a lot of love and affection. They weren't used to a man taking on his responsibilities and being a good person. One of them ended up sleeping with her ex-husband. I told her it was over, and 10 minutes later, there was a knock on my door, and I found my ex on her knees, begging me and crying for me to come back to her. The worst part was that her little daughter saw it all near the stairs. I hugged her and told her she was a smart and beautiful girl and that good things would happen to her in the future if she worked hard and did the right thing. Saying goodbye was infinitely more painful than the infidelity. God, I hope she has a good life. This reminds me of when I turned 18. I was super excited to get my first tattoo. I saved a ton to start small and see how far I could go. Well, my brother's ex showed up with her family and took almost all his stuff, with her family supporting her and threatening him. I heard my nephew crying because he couldn't eat at the table. It was easy to decide between a table and a bed versus a tattoo. I wouldn't get involved in a relationship with a single mother unless I saw a real long-term possibility. It is very hard for the child to have men coming in and out of their life. If I liked her enough to see myself staying by her side after the honeymoon phase, why haven't I? I only had a relationship with a single mother once, years ago. Her daughter was between 5 and 7 years old back then. Nowadays, I wouldn't want to go through that again. I respect single mothers, but it's not a relationship I would want to resume. We were basically friends, like just friends. But aside from that, I didn't manage to feel attachment or affection for her as if she were my daughter. It's not that I refused, I simply couldn't develop those kinds of feelings no matter how hard I tried. I wouldn't want to put someone else's daughter through that, nor would I want to experience it myself in a relationship. If I am going to be present in a child's life as a father figure, I want to feel that I am completely involved. My respects to those who achieve it, but it's not for me. I am a woman, but I would never date a man with children. I don't want to raise someone else's child. I don't want to deal with co-parenting or the lifelong bond with another parent that having stepchildren implies. Raising children is hard, and I'm not going to have my hands tied by being a stepmother with less authority. It's not that I wouldn't date someone I liked because they had a child. I simply never considered dating someone beyond that relationship once I knew they had a child. My initial response was that I would hesitate to date a single mother because having a child involved complicates everything a bit more and generates more stress. After thinking it over, I think that's not the whole truth. I asked myself if it would bother me to date a woman raising a younger sibling alone. I realized that idea doesn't worry me as much as the idea of dating a single mother. I think there are two main reasons for this. And once again, trying to be honest with myself and anyone reading this, I have what I would describe as an instinctive aversion to the possibility of raising and supporting a potential competitor's child. And it is unlikely that the father will disappear completely from her life. This complicates the relationship and makes me insecure, as he could become competition for me at some point. To finish, I want to say that these points may not be entirely correct or completely justified, but they are the best I can do to explain the reluctance I feel when thinking about the idea of dating a single mother. Obviously, there are many examples of dates of this type working well, and I doubt all men share my reluctant attitude. I hope this clarifies your doubt a little. I've noticed a pattern. A woman has a great male friend who loves her very much, but instead, she dates a jerk. The jerk gets her pregnant and, like a good jerk, abandons her to her fate. The woman turns to the world and starts asking her old male friends to help her raise this other guy's children. Meanwhile, the jerk is already looking for the next woman to get pregnant. Sorry, I'm a single father, somewhat bitter, and a lifelong friend. I dated a single mother I met on a dating website. I felt lonely and thought, what the hell? What's the worst that can happen if it doesn't work? The child was 5 months old, and the biological father didn't want to be part of his life. 15 years later, we are married. Her son is mine, and I don't call him anything other than mine. The perfect combination of not having a biological father meant that I never had to deal with the problems of having two fathers. I stopped talking to most of my family who told me I was foolish for getting involved with a single mother, but fortunately, her family is great, and I am living the happiest life I can with my two best friends, my wife and my gaming partner. Yes, I avoid dating single mothers. Honestly, I don't blame women for having children. I get it. Most want to start a family, and sometimes that family falls apart. But I don't want to get involved with someone with whom I'd have to deal with her ex's or her children's father's problems. And I also don't want the responsibility of caring for someone else's children if our relationship became more serious. Dating a parent means competing with the child for their time and attention. After an 8-hour workday, a parent returns to their biological role. They have doctor's appointments, field trips, and everything a child deserves for a happy life. Do you think I'm going to want to have a date at little Sally's softball game? And then there's the issue of dealing with the child. You can't correct, punish, or even explain things to children who aren't yours. Parents get so defensive and take such offense. Yes, those children are going to be a huge part of their lives and usually leave no room for anything else. Furthermore, it almost always seems to mean they are perpetually stressed, which isn't fun for anyone. I'm also not interested in talking about children, let alone raising them. And if I'm going down on a woman and suddenly think about a baby coming out of there, I instantly get nauseous. I think it's better for everyone involved if I stick to women who aren't interested in having children. I tried it for the first time, it was a total failure. I fell in love with both of them. She acted as if everything was wonderful and suddenly stood me up. It's a double shame to fall in love with both. If I had to give advice, I would date her first, and if it works, I would also try to build a relationship with the girl. Explain to her why you want to do it that way, and she will surely appreciate your concern. If I ever try again, that's what I'll do. My mother had this problem for almost all my childhood. She would meet a guy, and as soon as they found out she had kids, they would bail. This happened after dating for a while following several successful dates. It's worth mentioning that my mother wasn't looking for a father for me. In fact, I had a pretty good support network, albeit exclusively female, during my childhood and adolescence. So, what I would really like to know is, how can you tell if a relationship has long-term potential if it isn't even going to start? Is there a way to classify single mothers into long-term and short-term possibilities just by looking at them? I don't want children, yet it's assumed expected of me to start dating someone who has children and then tell her she has to get rid of the kids or simply do it anyway and hope that for some reason I change my mind, and if I don't change, break her heart and possibly theirs too by telling them, you know what? This isn't working, and it's because of the kids, something I already knew from the beginning. What a shitty thing to do, right? But maybe I should have done it for my own good. I dated a woman who had a son, and we got married. 9 years later, it became evident that we had fundamental flaws from the start. Flaws we had overlooked out of love. And those flaws led us down dark paths. I raised a child into a young man for almost a decade. And since I finally had the courage to leave his abusive mother, he has simply disappeared from my life. It hurts a lot. As a single father, I would only date a single mother. Children and custody agreements are complicated, and you need to be with someone who understands this dynamic. The children will be our number one priority, and to have an adult relationship, I have to be with someone who agrees to be the second priority for me. And vice versa. I have found that childless women who say they are okay with it eventually reveal that they don't really understand. Basically, they think kids are like pets and can be treated as such. No, we can't leave food on a plate for them, nor go out after they go to bed leaving them alone, nor abandon them with some random babysitter or at a shelter. I would do it, but only if they had 1 or 2 children. With more than 2, for me, it means we won't be able to form the relationship needed for it to last. Despite what people say, having children is hard work, and if you also try to raise 3 and form a bond with another person, your free time will be seriously affected because we all need time for ourselves. It also depends on the father's situation. If he is present, better, but if not, the woman will barely have free time. The best one can hope for is that a bond forms in a year, when in reality it takes between 3 and 4 years to develop. I have children myself, and I already struggle to find time for myself, so I wouldn't want to be a complication or source of distress for a woman who already has a lot to do. Yes, I had a relationship. It wasn't easy, but it was all because of the mother, not her son. She was looking for an immediate substitute father. We broke up because I didn't earn enough to support her and her son. She married the next guy she dated 3 months later. I don't see the difference between being a mother or not. Each relationship should be a separate case. Generalizing is never a good idea. I met a woman in my senior year of college. We were both 23, and she had a daughter of almost 3. We were together for about 2 years before I legally adopted her, and we got married a year later. The marriage lasted about 4 years, but the adoption was a big decision. She is still my daughter, and I am still her father. So far, my decisions haven't been the best. But the initial decision to date a single mother turned out to be the best decision of my life. No. And here is why. My last relationship was my failed marriage. She had a son who was born about 6 months before we met. I got extremely attached to him during the 2 years we were together. When we split up, his loss hurt me much more than hers. We reconciled, but I am not his father, and I can't be popping in and out of his life with new girlfriends only to disappear for weeks. There are still sleepless nights, sometimes unable to sleep because I miss him so much. It was like losing a son. I can't go through that pain again. The loss of that child was harder than any breakup I have suffered. My opinion on this is rarely popular, but here it is. When I date someone, I am willing to date almost anyone. However, the exception to my rule is single mothers. You see, I enjoy sex, but I don't enjoy having children. Don't get me wrong. I love children. I have many little cousins who make me smile and sometimes make me feel more important than I am when they ask for advice. However, what I like most about children is that I am not their mother. I enjoy socializing and interacting with them, but not disciplining them, worrying about their well-being, or supporting them. I don't want to be a mother. Parents, please spare me the lecture if you have no idea what you're saying. It is a personal decision. I don't want children. How does this influence dating a single mother? I practice safe sex religiously. Single mothers already have children. Whether by marriage or an accident, they have their children and love them. And I am happy for them. Being a parent isn't easy, and being a good parent is worthy of admiration. My situation is such that I do not desire that position, with or without admiration. Basically, my problem with dating a single mother is that I know what will happen in case of an accident. If birth control fails, the single mother will undoubtedly keep the baby, and I will be in a situation I do not desire. Basically, that's it. In my opinion, children are for married couples who agree that they want to be the third priority in the relationship after the child and their spouse. I am not in that situation, and therefore I do not wish to date a single mother. It's not a criticism of mothers, but my desires do not align with those of dating a single mother. When I was young and a single mother, I didn't want to date men because I didn't want anyone competing for my attention or influencing my parenting. Furthermore, statistically, having a stepfather is the main indicator of abuse. Now one is doing a master's in law, and the other is in her second year of a STEM degree. And the world is mine. Ha! Guess what? I won't date any single fathers or men with annoying little kids. I already did my part. I dated a single mother for about 4 years. Our daughter was born 2 months before we started dating. I loved her and her daughter as if she were mine. She started calling me dad, and to my surprise, no one corrected her. I was young, 23 years old, but I was completely prepared for the responsibility. In fact, I loved it. It gave me a purpose. However, it turned out that I was more prepared for the child than she was, which meant I was generally the one taking care of her. When things inevitably went wrong, I lost my daughter. Even though biologically she isn't mine. After 4 years of being called dad and fulfilling the father role, I definitely feel like one. In short, I raised someone else's daughter as if she were mine for 4 years. The relationship deteriorated, and I lost my daughter. I wouldn't do it again. I dated an older man who was the father of an 18-year-old boy, and I thought it wouldn't affect our relationship much since initially, he lived in another state with his mother. Well, after a year, the mother sent him to live with my boyfriend. I knew by reputation that he was pretty bad, but I wasn't prepared for the tremendous destruction this boy caused in my relationship. He had the temperament of a 9-year-old throwing a tantrum. He refused to look for a job. He constantly begged, crying for money and things. He had dropped out of school after finishing middle school and wouldn't accept any homeschooling plan. He physically assaulted his father and threw things at him. He called the police because his father tried to discipline him. He never went out and played video games 12 hours a day. He carried a BB gun in his belt that looked like a real gun. They lived in an intentional living community. Imagine that. This scared the neighbors. And generally, he screamed so loud throughout the night that the neighbors had to constantly call the building managers and the police. And yet, his father, either the most patient and understanding man in the world or the dumbest, allowed him to live with him, use the only bedroom in the apartment while he slept in the living room, and worked 2 jobs to support him. I couldn't do it. I took off when I realized nothing was going to change. At 24, I dated a 21-year-old single mother with a 2-year-old son. We married, had another child, and sadly divorced. Our children are the most important thing in my life. I wouldn't trade them for anything in the world. I am now 35 years old and dating another single mother. We've been together for almost a year, and I'm getting very attached to her daughters, just as she is to my children. Having 2 different schedules with the kids makes life interesting sometimes, but I wouldn't change a thing. It seems to me that single mothers are more sensible, something I like, and more responsible than most women my age. I dated a girl who had a 1.5-year-old daughter. When we started dating, there were some difficulties, but nothing serious. There were some little problems with the child. For example, for a while, every time I hugged the girl, the child would try to separate us, but that was solved when she started loving me more. I think the hardest part of the whole kid thing was that her way of disciplining the children wasn't what I considered appropriate, but again, we solved that too. We don't date anymore, but I am still very close friends with her and her daughter, who is now 8 years old and a great kid. Like everything, it depends on the circumstances, and most of them come with age. There is a huge stigma against single mothers, as evidenced by the initial question, and partly it is deserved. Things get a hell of a lot more complicated when there is a child involved, even when married. It all comes down to her situation and your willingness to accept the possibility of helping raise someone else's child. If she is financially and emotionally stable and looking for someone to share her life with not just as a father for her child but also as a partner. And if she has taken responsibility for her life and her child's life on her own, then I see no problem in dating a single mother. However, if she doesn't have financial or emotional stability, or if she is unable to take charge of her child or children, she will probably cause you more problems than benefits. You will end up being the breadwinner, the sole person responsible for childcare, or both. Don't get involved in someone else's problems unless you are willing to assume the responsibility they lack. I am currently 31 and a half. I have known my girlfriend for over 10 years and her children since they were little. They are now 7 and 13 years old. My kids like me and want me to be more present, but I work out of the country. Right now I'm in Canada and can only see them every 2 months or so. My girlfriend isn't looking for a father for her children. They already have one. He's a jerk most of the time, but he takes them on weekends every 2 weeks. We get along well almost all the time, and they are old enough to be happy that I make their mother happy. My parents divorced when I was 5, and my mother started dating my now stepfather after the divorce was final. They have been married for 23 or 24 years, and I was lucky he was a good stepfather. We had our differences when I was a teenager, but now that I'm an adult, we get along wonderfully and love each other very much. When I dated other single mothers, I always tried not to get too intimate with their children under any circumstances, except as a friend of the mother. It is always easier to disengage from a friendship in your own home than if you decide to live with a single mother. I am a single woman who doesn't date single fathers. I am respectful but firm in my decision not to date them, and this is usually poorly received, generally with some insult about my supposed loneliness or that their children are better than me, etc. I don't know why, it's my preference. And I say it clearly because I don't want to waste anyone's time. I choose a child-free life and respect those who have or want a family. It's simply not for me. I'm not saying anything immature or negative about being a single mother, but I have been harshly criticized for it several times. I never wanted to have children. I got romantically involved with a woman who has 4 children. Her father passed away just before I appeared in her life. It was pretty hard. We started a relationship, and I thought it would be great to meet them after a couple of months. The relationship wasn't good at all and followed the same pattern as previous ones. My therapists and I have come to the conclusion that she most likely has borderline personality disorder. I adore this woman and those kids, although it would be impossible to date her. It was heartbreaking to leave the kids after having earned their love and trust. I miss them. She contacted me recently, and it hurts to think about it again. I won't date another woman with children unless it is a supremely responsible relationship for both. Otherwise, I avoid it for the sake of the children and for what could go wrong. All of this. I am a single mother, and when I started dating people after my divorce, I felt like no one understood that I couldn't drop everything and reorganize my life and my daughters to go out for a drink, dinner, etc., overnight. And very few seemed to understand or respect my boundaries regarding my daughter. I briefly dated a man who said he understood I needed to protect her, but he insisted on seeing her and buying her gifts. Then I met my current boyfriend, who is also a single father. We waited a bit to get to know the kids and introduce them, but since then, we have really enjoyed doing things all together. Some may not like it, and that's okay, they don't have to understand it. Dating is different when you are a parent and you find what works for you. It complicates everything, no doubt, but sometimes good things are worth it. I am a stepmother and have no biological children. I strongly recommend everyone not to start a relationship with a parent, especially if they don't have children. I am very happy to be married to my husband and to have my stepson, but life is complicated, and honestly, everything has changed since we started dating. I never imagined this was going to happen. Example, when we started dating, my husband had our son from Friday to Monday. The biological mother was actively involved in his upbringing. My stepson was a well-educated and well-behaved child. He was 2 years old when we started dating. 9 years later, and with primary custody, the mother has the child on weekends, has completely disengaged from his education, and moved 45 minutes away. My stepson also came close to being expelled from school and has several mental health issues that we managed with therapy and medication for his attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Additionally, in the last few years, there have been between 8 and 9 calls to social services against the biological mother, none of them made by us. Life in general is very unpredictable, but much more so in a blended family, because 2 households have to be taken into account. Unless that person is the one, and I am grateful that my husband is, it may not be worth it. And then there are the guilty parents who refuse to raise their children because they feel bad, and the children who have many problems because separations are hard, even for us. My husband and his ex separated when the boy was a newborn. If they are your ideal partner, are willing to support you, prioritize your relationship, and defend you fiercely, it is worth it. I am lucky to have all this and more, but the vast majority of stepfathers and stepmothers I meet and talk to are made scapegoats by practically everyone. And then there are the social prejudices about stepfathers and stepmothers, especially stepmothers. It's too much. I think it's something that can be experienced both ways. When I was in my 20s, I had no interest in dating a single father. I didn't want the responsibility of suddenly forming a family, and I was afraid of getting attached to the children and things not working out with their father. When I met my now husband, he was very honest about having a son, and we waited about 6 months before I met his son. When we got married, I made vows to both my husband and my stepson, promising to love him and be a positive influence in his life. I have always treated him like a son of my own, but I know that ultimately any decision concerning him belongs to my husband and his ex. It has taken me years, but now my stepson considers me a second mother, and we have built a great relationship based on mutual trust and love. I did this for about 4 years, and I must say I got very attached to those little rascals. Although the relationship with their mother didn't work out, I still take them to the zoo, the circus, or just the doctor's appointments that their mother can't attend. We met when the little one was 2 years old and the older one was already 6, so in a way, I knew them for most of their childhood, and we had a lot of fun together. The first few months, the mother tried to keep them as far away from me as possible to protect them, but after about 6 months, I finally met them. I was, and still am, completely in love with the little girl who smiled at me and touched my beard and glasses every time I walked into her room. The older one was a bit suspicious at first, but ever since we started playing together, we became real friends. Over the months and years, I became more and more attached to them and spent many sleepless nights while they were sick. The first day of school was a whole drama, but that's another story. I never felt them like my children, and they never considered me their father. My mother took it very seriously, and I even got along well with the biological father. My feelings could be described as those of a big brother. That brother who kills you if you give his little brother a weird look. Thinking about it always brings a smile to my face. Summary: they are the reason I want to have children someday. The best experience of my life. And thank you so much for watching the video, friends. Remember that you can comment with stories you have regarding this question and comment on which story impacted you the most. Remember to leave your like, subscribe, comment, and share the video so YouTube recommends it to more people. XD.